Hey everyone, thanks for posting your comments on Instagram at Charlie and Violet regarding this image that's extremely underexposed. I know you wanted to see how I corrected it because I know many of you newborn photographers are having the same issue that I had. You have the baby set up perfectly, she's sleeping, and you go to trigger your light system through your camera and your battery dies, or something happens where your light just doesn't trigger. That happened with this baby, and she was perfectly sleeping for 10 minutes, and it took me, that long to figure out, oh, my battery died. And by that time, she had moved and actually didn't go back to this pose. So this was the image that I had to see if I could salvage for the family. And luckily, I was shooting in RAW, and I was able to completely restore it to a point where they can use it and print it and love it. So if that happens to you, please try to use these steps to see if you can recover the image. Keep in mind, you must be shooting in RAW. A JPEG probably won't get the results that you want because RAW images just have more data. And then just keep in mind that some images aren't going to be able to be recovered, whether it's a certain setting on your camera, you had a high ISO to begin with, where you can't reduce the grain. Many things to keep in mind, but luckily with this one it worked. So I'm going to walk you through the steps on how I fixed it. So I'm going to be working in LightRoom and working with a bunch of the sliders to get it to a point where I can take it into Photoshop and then perfect it. So for this one, I'm going to go all the way up into the basic slider system under exposure. I'm going to bring it up to a point where I like that it's bright enough. And right off the bat, you'll see that you have an increase of orange. So I'm going to go down to the color sliders and take the orange down to a point where it's better white balanced here. I recommend doing it this way versus using the temperature sliders. I just get a better result. And then I'm going to go back up to the exposure and try not to use too much exposure, just enough to get it bright enough, because every time you use the exposure slider to this degree, you're going to add the noise and grain. It's just inevitable. So work with some other sliders if you can to get the brightness. And if you need to go back to your exposure, you can do that too. But what I'm going to do next to get rid of some of that grain is go down to this detail panel and go to the noise reduction and luminance and increase that a little bit so you can try to get rid of some of that grain. I would not go too heavy-handed on this because your baby can end up looking like plastic. So make sure to zoom in and out and check what's happening with the image so you can get something that looks like this. Keeps the detail and the texture in the baby skin, but also gets rid of some of the grain. And from this point, I would probably just export it into Photoshop and do my tweaks. As you can see, this baby still has a diaper on, so I'm going to take that off, and maybe I'll do another video on how I do that and just finish this baby so it looks presentable. So another option for you all, if you're finding that you're liking this image, but it's just not looking great in color and there's too much grain, I would say just convert it to a black and white and add a little more grain. Maybe take out the luminance completely or leave the grain and just convert it to a black and white in Photoshop or in Lightroom and just give them a great image that's a little bit more grainier, but you don't have to work with the color issue that you're seeing. So that's how I would fix this. And let me know on Instagram if you guys need any more help at Charlie and Violet. Or just email me, Nicole@charlieandviolet.com.